Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever or wherever you're watching or listening to us. This is the Awesemo Nhl Dfs Strategy Show, and I am your host, Michael Clifford, aka Slim Cliffy. Joining me today in a game of NBA Jam against Gary Payton and Sean Kemp is our daily dime dropper, Mr. Joshua Harris. Josh, how you doing today, bud?
I was gonna do a "he's heating up" impression, but I wasn't prepared.
He's heating up.
He's heating up. Yeah, doing pretty good. Playoff hockey is one of the best times of the year. Even if you aren't a hockey fan, watching playoff hockey is pretty awesome. So I enjoy this type of year. The weather's nice. I'm just excited.
Man, I was talking with my old man last night, and I was like, we were talking about the game so far, and it seems like every game has been an absolute banger, right? There hasn't been I guess Colorado St. Louis was kind of one-sided, but most games were like pretty close. Lots of overtimes, back and forth, late goals and stuff like that. Like, this has been a really entertaining first round so far.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, the Islanders-Pittsburgh series is okay. Like, I mean, maybe it's just the Islanders that I'm not super excited about, but like that Tampa-Florida series has been incredible through 2 games.
Yeah, and even Boston-Washington.
Yeah.
We have that game later on the slate. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Their first 2 games have been absolute bangers as well. Looking at, let's go back to last night's slate. Should shout out our buddy, YCMMAT, took down the 20K in the sticks last night. You can't make money at that. I guess you actually can. Congrats to him. It was a weird
face off for 3 hours before that. Fell asleep before Tuck scored 2 goals. Woke up to 20,000. Classic.
Yeah, not a bad night when you can go to bed thinking you're toast and wake up with 20K in the bank account. You just mentioned Alex Tuck's 2 goals. Matt Dumba had a massive night in that game as well. I know Jake on the show yesterday was talking about players to use on the Minnesota blue line, because we were expecting a lot of Vegas shots and a lot of opportunities to block shots. And I think Spurgeon and Dumba were the 2 guys that he came up with. So anybody that used Dumba, 8 block shots, 1 goal, 1 shot away from the combo meal bonus. Huge night for him. How did you do last night in cash anyway?
I kind of made like a hybrid. I don't know what I was doing. I was like, so I kind of I took a 3-man Islanders, 3-man Tampa, and then a couple defensemen from Vegas. And like the defensemen on Vegas were fine. Like Alec Martinez and Pietrangelo, they were fine. I had Marc-Andre Fleury. He had a great game. But, Tampa 1 didn't really do too much. I left off Palat for Hedman, so that sank me as well.
Yeah, Palat had a good game, and it was kind of funny to watch because he was a guy that got a lot of talk in our premium Slack chat yesterday, because there's talk, is he injured? His production had fallen off towards the end of the year. I think someone in our Slack was saying that they were going to play him in cash, and people were kind of incredulous. Like, why would you play him in cash? And then lo and behold, puts up a goal and an assist with the shot block bonus. Pretty great night for Andre Palat. Low scoring pretty much, across the board last night. I think that's something we should expect in playoff hockey, right? And talking about low scoring in playoff hockey, let's talk about short slates in general. Playoffs, at least the first round, they're all going to be short slates. They're going to be 3-4 game slates. And as we move on, it'll be 2 game slates, and then eventually the showdown slates. But for the next few weeks, there's going to be 2 to 4 games. So let's talk cash game strategy first. You play a lot of cash games, or at least you've started playing a lot more cash games over the last 6 weeks or so. How does your strategy differentiate on, let's say, a 10-game slate versus, something like tonight, a 4-game slate?
10-game slate, 4-game slate. If you have studs, you're going to have to make decisions, right? Like tonight we have lots of centers to pick from. There's McDavid, there's McKinnon, Bergeron. So I think what you try to do is you really don't want to fade McDavid in cash. You don't really want to fade McDavid on a short slate. That's just dangerous. In GPPs, I think you can do it. And fade and hope he has a bad game, and you leverage the field. But in cash, you really want those guys with the high floor. So for me, tonight, I'm going to be deciding between McKinnon, McDavid, Bergeron. I'll probably use 2 of the 3. I'll try to find some value forwards, so maybe some cheaper defensemen who block shots. Because in playoff games, like the intensity's up, it's more chippy, it's more like physical. So I don't know if there's data on it. I'm sure there is, but I would imagine the amount of block shots go up in a playoff game. The amount of chances to block shots go up. So I like to find these cheaper guys who have a chance at the shot block bonus. I haven't completely set my team yet, but someone like a Brett Pesce at 3,300 would interest me. For you look for these cheaper guys who block shots to fit in these high floor, high ceiling plays. And then on the GPP side, I think one of the things you can do on short slates is, when we talked about it on Showdown too, I don't think you have to full stack. If you have an elite line, I think you do it. But if you're, if you say like Washington won, you don't have to full stack them. Like you can just one off Ovechkin. You could do Ovechkin Mantha. I don't think it's completely necessary to full stack. We talked about why, how often are goals, full line goals. I think you can leave off a guy off the stack and put in the power play quarterback. You can mix and match. I don't think going cookie cutter 4-3-1 in GPPs is necessarily the best idea in a 3-4 game slate. You can, put in a stack you like and mix and match some high floor, high ceiling guys with them.
Yeah, that's a good point about GPPs. Whereas that's where I'm going to pick up is that when we get down to 3 and 4 game slates, I rarely just go like 2-3-3 stacks, right? Like I won't just put like a top line from one team and a second line from another team and then just walk away. That's very rare. Like often maybe I'll have 1 3-man stack and then I'll have maybe a 2-man stack and then like a forward and a defenseman and then a one-off or something like that. Like with shorter slates, you like we've talked about on Monday with the Showdown, and you just brought up like full line goals aren't a very common thing. I mean, I think I mentioned fewer than half of McDavid's goals this year had just Draisaitl on them, let alone their winger on top of that. So full line goals, if you get them 25% of the time from a line, I think would be a very high mark. So where it doesn't happen that often, you go 3-man and then, maybe a 2-man forward stack. And then, shorter slate, something like a double defenseman is something that works a lot. Crowd favorite around here. I saw Whistles Go Woo had a second place finish, I think a couple nights ago with a double defenseman and I think a double winger stack and then a solo center and then a 3-man stack or something like that. Besides that, like it was a very unique build. And you need those unique builds. The fewer the games, the fewer the teams, the fewer the players, because those full line goals just don't happen as often. So you need those unique builds. So something like double defenseman, something like pairing, 2 pairs of forwards from different teams, soloing a center, something like that. You do have to get a little bit more different than just going with your standard 3-3. And also like, I don't necessarily correlate my goalies as much on shorter slates. Like on shorter slates, I really want to look for the nuts goalies. So like I might play 1 or 2 goalies if I'm playing a bunch of lineups. Like if I'm playing 20 lineups, I might have 2 different goalies and that's about it. Where on, bigger slates, I might have 5 or 6. So I'm less likely to correlate my goalies on a shorter slate. Is there a different way you approach goalie in cash games, short slate versus large slate, or is it basically just the same?
I mean, I'm just, in cash, I kind of look for the heavy favorite that's going to at least see some volume. So normally I'm not a spend up guy in goalie, but in cash I've been doing it. In GPPs, I completely agree with you. I don't correlate. I want to play the best goalie. Like on a 10-game slate, obviously there's usually multiple paths to victory. If you don't have the nut goalie, you still can win. But like on a 3-game slate, if you get a Cam Talbot performance from game 1 and you don't have him, you're not going to win. So you really need to have the best goalie on the slate.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I'm not super high on, just slam correlating every single lineup on a short slate like this. All right. We do have some games to get to. Anything else you want to mention about short slates, or do you think we have it covered?
I mean, I think you can do some unique things. Like you talked about double defensemen. You can even, if you're building, you can even put 3 defensemen in. It doesn't have to be from the same team. You do a 3D build, with guys who, like Vegas, for example, you don't have to use all three, but you can use a defenseman from a different team, and then you can put in Alec Martinez or Pietrangelo and Shea Theodore. You pick two of the three. You put one in the utility spot. You have three guys, and those defensemen usually have a high floor, and they can have a high ceiling too. So that's a way to get unique on a short slate and get you a lot of points. Like even having someone like Dumba, as your third defenseman, he got you 28 points last night. Just ways to get different. You don't have to get crazy, like, leaving off Bergeron and putting in Curtis Lazar. Like, you don't have to get that crazy. You can, there's ways to get different.
Yeah, I like mentioning the third defenseman, especially in playoffs, right? Because something that we talked about is, if games go into overtime, they can go 20, 40, 60 extra minutes. And that's where guys who shoot and guys who block shots really rack up their value. So that, if you can get into a double playoff overtime game, that triple defenseman can really come through big for you. So yeah, I agree with you there. But we do have some games to get to for this slate. Before we get to them, if you guys could throw us a like, and especially subscribe. The subscriptions really help us grow the channel here, keep these shows coming as often as we can bring them. And it keeps the other shows, MLBs almost daily, NBAs daily, and so on and so forth. So please throw us a subscription while you're here. And if you can't catch our YouTube shows, just head to awesemo.com/podcast to check out almost all of our YouTube shows. Most of them go up in podcast form, except for the Live Before Lock. Obviously, those doesn't have a long shelf life, but everything else goes up. So if you're looking for something on your commute home from work or something like that, head to awesemo.com/podcast. Leave a 5-star review with your name, your Twitter handle or email address, and you'll be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum for up to 1 year. So head to awesemo.com/podcast to check out what we have going on for our podcast. All right, let's get into these games. Our very first one is Washington with a 2.4 implied goal total going into Boston. The Bruins have a 3.1 implied goal total. Washington is going to be dealing with some injuries. Both Lars Eller and TJ Oshie didn't skate. Eller was hurt last game and left the game. Oshie, it looks like he's been hurt for a few weeks now, so I think Oshie still plays regardless. But I don't know if Lars Eller is going to play. And after Lars Eller got hurt, what they did was move Tom Wilson to the top line. That's an interesting line combination that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. The second line ended up TJ Oshie between Anthony Mantha and Connor Sheary. That's what they went to after Lars Eller got hurt. So we don't have an update on Eller. We assume Oshie will play. Evgeny Kuznetsov is technically cleared to play, but they said he's not up to speed. He hasn't played in over 2 weeks. So it could be a case where they're waiting, 2 or 3 more practices for Kuznetsov to get in. So technically he could play tonight, but I wouldn't expect him. So looks like Eller and Kuznetsov may be out. Looks like Oshie may be in. What do you like here, Josh?
It's hard to get away from Boston tonight, especially if Eller is out. Like, putting Tom Wilson on the top line and taking Anthony Mantha off probably makes them worse defensively. I would imagine it definitely makes them worse defensively. And they're going to get the Bergeron matchup, which is just brutal. The series has shifted to Boston. So, I mean, I really do like Boston one tonight again. Anytime you can get a line with Ovechkin and Tom Wilson on it, you got to take advantage of that defensively. But it also frees up the depth, right? If Oshie moves up to the second line center with Connor Sheary and Mantha, Mantha's a good player. We've talked about it ad nauseum since he's got traded away from Detroit, which is probably the best thing for his career, but that's for another time. But like Oshie and Sheary, Oshie's a winger. Sheary's not a good defensive player. So, they're going to get Taylor Hall, Krejci Smith. And they don't get much power play time, if not at all. But that is a very plus matchup. Taylor Hall has been playing well. Yeah, he has some trouble finishing his shot sometimes. But I don't think you have to full stack that second line, but you can definitely take some pieces. You could do a Krejci Hall, Krejci Smith, something like that, a Hall Smith. However it fits your build. Craig Smith is the cheapest one of the three, so he provides the most salary relief. So depending on your build, you can pick and choose from there. But, I really do like Boston one again tonight. I talked about how goalie skill didn't matter with Craig Anderson. And then I watched the first goal. He ended up in Philadelphia. He got deked out so bad. I'll eat some crow on that one. I mean, he ended up playing pretty okay after that, but that was pretty brutal. I mean, it was a nice move, but I definitely think Boston one's in play for sure. They're still, relatively cheap compared to how they normally have been priced during the regular season. So I think you can go there fully correlated power play one. They're an elite line. So that's a line I would full stack if I use them. So I like them. I like Boston too, bits and pieces. I don't think you need a full stack. And then Nick Ritchie is a one-off that I would definitely consider power play one. I think you can put him in with Coyle too if you want. Like that third line.
Oh, wait. He got moved off power play one last game. David Krejci got moved up.
Krejci got moved up. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, Krejci becomes a one-off then if he's on power play one. You can Ritchie Coyle two-man. You can put in DeBruski at a goal last game. Like they're going to get the bottom six of Washington, which is a mess right now. So I think, as you go down the lineup, there's bits and pieces you can choose. Like, I don't mind that third line, especially if you're doing something creative with Colorado or Edmonton, something like that. You can take bits from there. On the Washington side, that top line getting the Bergeron matchup is a tough one. It is a 4-game slate. If it was like 6-7 games, I would just completely write them off. But this is the playoffs. I think you can, one off Ovechkin. It is pricey. He's going to be a little bit lower owned, but if they do get a couple power plays, I think he can convert from his office. And then on the second line, if Mantha's on that second line with Oshie, I don't mind that as a two-man. But for the most part, this is a Boston game for me.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think ownership alone says that Washington is in play. I'm not super high on them. I don't think I'm going to play him here tonight. Like, it's just an absolutely terrible matchup going into Boston one. And to the point about Tom Wilson being on the top line, the line of Ovechkin, Backstrom, and Wilson this year, 1.7 expected goals for per 60, 2.5 expected goals against per 60, 40.7% expected goals share. Just not a good line. Boston should be able to have their way with them here tonight. But, Backstrom and Ovechkin are still Backstrom and Ovechkin. It doesn't take a lot for those two to pop a couple goals in. So, like I said, I'm probably playing 3 lineups tonight. I'm not going to have Washington in any of them, but ownership says that if people did want to play Washington, especially the top line, absolutely no problem there. But I'm with you on Boston one. Their ice time came down a little bit last game. They're all around 19 to 20 minutes, not the 21 plus they got in game one. But I also saw Brad Marchand took a bunch of penalties. So it's like, yeah, okay. If Marchand can not, like, he was being a little bit of an idiot last game. Like, if he can not be an idiot and stay out of the box, I think Boston 1 will be just fine. I think Boston 2, like, I have no problem using Boston 2. Like, in a nutshell, it's just one, we have them over-owned by our top tools leverage. We have them as, the fourth most over-owned stack, basically tied for third with one of the Colorado lines. So, it's not really a great matchup. Like, going into Oshie, he's actually not that bad as a two-way, center or a two-way winger. I guess he'd be playing center today. Anthony Mantha, you said the same, you talked about it. He's good defensively. I think that takes Boston 2 out of play for me. So I'm in more, like, I love Boston 1 here tonight. Probably my favorite line on the whole slate, especially when we factor in ownership. Like, we have Boston 1 coming in under 20%. We have their top 2 stack percentage over 30%. So I'm just fine using Boston 1 here tonight. Boston 3, I think I would just more one-off guys, like one off DeBrusk, one off Coyle. Like, I don't know if they necessarily get there as a trio. And, like, with Washington's injuries, like, some of the guys moving up from the fourth line might actually make that third line better. So with Tom Wilson going up to the top line, like, it's not necessarily an easy matchup for Boston 3. So I'm in on Boston 1 mostly in this game. One thing to keep in mind, Ovechkin only played 17 minutes last game. That's worrying for a playoff game for me. That tells me that maybe there's some kind of injury. And remember, before the season finished, he played 1 shift in a game and left after not having played for like 10 days. So Ovechkin's probably playing through some sort of significant injury here. Just something to keep in mind. All right, on the blue line, Charlie McAvoy's price will keep him in play for me at 4,700. Obviously, Grizzly, if you want to correlate with Boston 1, On the Washington side, you mentioned him last show on Monday. Brendan Dillon, super cheap, back-to-back games over 20 minutes. I do like Dillon here tonight. Is there anybody else that sticks out to you?
That's really about it on the Washington side. If you want to use Carlson and some Washington stacks, I think that's fine. He's under 6,000, so if you want to off him, I think it's okay. It's not something I would do in 1 to 3, but Brendan Dillon for me if you need a punt. Austin side, Grizzly McAvoy. If you want to punt Riley, I think that's fine, but I'm going to look mostly for defensemen in other games tonight.
All right. In net, I'm not playing 7,600 Craig Anderson. I'm pretty sure that's just out of the realm of reasonableness here. Any interest in Tuukka Rask at 8,200?
I mean, we talked about like correlating goalies and lineups, but like I don't think he's going to be the best goalie on the slate tonight. If you want to play him in cash because you think Boston's going to win, I think that's fine. But in GPPs, I think there are some better options.
Fair enough. Also, should mention this slate locks at 6:30 Eastern, so 30 minutes earlier than normal. I know a lot of people out there have kids to put to bed and stuff like that, so that 30 minutes might not help them at all. But just be aware that 6:30 Eastern is the lock for today's slate. New Awesemo Plus users. Do you want to be a new user to Awesemo Plus? With nearly every DFS sport in season and NBA and NHL in the playoffs, it's a great time to be a DFS player. Pick up your first month of Awesemo Plus Platinum for 25% off and you use the promo code GOLDRUSH. That's promo code GOLDRUSH, one word, all caps. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and a whole lot more. You don't want to miss this offer. It is valid through tomorrow. So head to Awesemo.com, use the promo code GOLDRUSH, all one word, all in caps for 25% off your first month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And I know we were talking about NHL Showdown a lot on Monday. NBA Showdown in playoffs is also a big thing. And if people watching this want to get a little taste of NBA, but they don't want to get a full month or a full year package or anything like that, we've got a little deal for you guys as well. The great news is that our NBA Express Pass gives you full access to all of our tools for NBA Showdown and single games, including player projections and ownership projections. This weekly NBA Pass is only $4.95, but when you sign up with the promo code PLAYIN, that's play-in, you will get an extra week of NBA Express completely free. That's 2 weeks of NBA Express for $4.95. This pass will give you access to lineup builder, ownership rankings, and big board player values for all slates. This is your pass, Awesemo Plus pass for NBA playoff action. So use promo code PLAYIN. That's PLAYIN with a hyphen at checkout today. You'll get 2 weeks of NBA Showdown greatness for just $4.95. Not a bad deal at all. Want to get to our super chat. Want to thank Justin Edwards for that $10 super chat. Thank you so much. He says, "Hey boys, thanks for all the help. I did the math and I'm 4K up for my first year of DFS because of you." Good stuff, Justin. Always love to see people come out in the plus side for money. So good on you on a good season. He says he has a quick question. If I'm running a 3-2-1, is it okay to have a D on the same team but not on the same line? Real quick, one thing I remember, I think it was a guy from Fantasy Labs, like 3 or 4 years ago, did a DK correlation study for defensemen and forwards. And it was basically what you would expect. First pair and third pair defensemen correlated best with top liners, and second pair defensemen correlated best with second liners. And that makes sense, right? Because your top pair is usually out with your top line. Your third pair is usually bad, so you don't want them out with your third, fourth lines. You want them out with your best players, so you put them out with your top line, and that leaves your second line going out with your second line. So I would say, like, no, you don't. If you're playing Ovechkin and Backstrom tonight, let's say, I would say, no, you absolutely don't need to play John Carlson. Obviously, it's nice to have that extra power play correlation, but no, you don't need to play him. You can sneak in as a Dano Chara or a Nick Jensen if you want to get really different. Do you have any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, if they're not going to be on the same line, I think you can do it if they do share power play time together, or the guy on that line, the defenseman, is a shot blocker. Just, you want those bonuses or you want that power play time together if they're not going to get the 5v5 time together.
Yeah, that's a good point. If it's a 3-2-1, you want that guy to be a peripherals guy. You don't want him to be a point generator guy, because if he's a point generator guy and he goes off, that means one of your stacks is not going off along with him. So yeah, good point. Should be a guy with peripherals, not necessarily just a point generator. All right, let's move this along. We got another game to get to. We have Nashville with a 2.2 implied goal total going into Carolina. Carolina has a 3.2 implied goal total. Some Carolina news. Andrei Svechnikov stayed on the top line at morning skate. So it looks like Svech, Aho, Teravainen top line with Necas, Niederreiter, Trocheck second line, and Warren Foegele down on the third line with Jordan Staal and Jesper Fast. Nashville said they're going to have new line combinations here today. In the morning skate, all that really changed was Nick Cousins going to the third line. And Tanner Jeannot, going to the fourth line. So, assuming what they did at the morning skate is what their big changes are going to be, there shouldn't be anything changing in the top six for Nashville. Just, be aware that the coach said there could be lineup changes coming in. It doesn't necessarily mean we've seen all the changes to come so far. There could be more changes. We just don't know right now. Assuming that we have the lines that we have, what do you like about this game? Because I think despite the 2.2 from Nashville, I think there might be something on both sides here.
Yeah. This is the best iteration of lines for the Hurricanes, I think. I
agree with you there too.
But if you look at the numbers, they are. I'll start with Nashville real quick because they have a 2.2 total. Their top line, Forsberg, Johansson, Arvidsson, they're going to get the Staal, Foegele, Fast. And, that is probably the best matchup for them. So they're a little bit higher owned than I want them to be, but I would rather play Nashville 1 against Carolina than I would Washington 1 against Boston. So you're going to have to, get some people in that you don't particularly love. You don't have to full stack. If you want to leave Ryan Johansson off, you can. You want to leave Arvidsson off, you can. You want to one off Forsberg, I think that's okay. I mean, really, that top line is the only thing I would be interested in Nashville. If you want to one off Mikael Granlund or Calle Jarnkrok, I think that's okay. If you want to, the problem with the second line, they're going to get absolutely destroyed by the Aho line. Like, they're just going to get run over. The third line is going to get, the third line might get the Aho, Granlund might get Aho, but whoever doesn't get that is going to get Trocheck, and it's just equally as horrible. I think it's going to be the top line for the Predators for me, or if you really need a cheap two-man, Haula Duchesne is okay. There's $6,000 for the two of them on DraftKings. I think you can do worse than that for $6,000. On the Carolina side, Carolina 1 is going to be one of my favorite lines of the night as well. We're going to need a rerun ownership with the new lines. I would imagine it creeps up a little bit, but right now they're around 12%. Even if it creeps up to 14, 15, 16, I think that's in play. From an ownership perspective and a line I've been on all season, that second line, Trocheck, Niederreiter, Necas, is going to interest me for sure. I think you can use either of the top six lines or, one off a Jordan Staal, something like that on the third line. He's on the top power play still. It's always questionable whether he stays there, but he was there for a bit last game. So under 4,000 on the power play, I think you can definitely use him. He would be cash viable for sure. Nashville 1's in play for me. And then the top six at Carolina is probably one of my favorite spots of the night.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the thing with Carolina is the ownership is not out of control here. We have Carolina 1. I should say, depending on the line. Carolina 3's ownership is well out of control. Yeah. Carolina 1, we have them coming in between 11 and 12%, which is just fine, I think, on a 4-game slate. Carolina 2, we have them coming in down around 5%. I think that might come up now that Niederreiter's on that line. But I still think it stays under, 10% or less. So, I'm fine with either of those top two Carolina lines. I agree with you on Nashville. I want that Nashville top line. I think Jake's railing against the road teams here tonight, and the road teams aren't in very good matchups. This is pretty bad matchups across the board. But Nashville 1, I think, is in a favorable matchup here today. Like, Faust, Stahl, and Fogel are fine as a third line, but they're not a great shutdown line, right? Like, this isn't Minnesota with Erickson and Foligno and those guys. So Carolina 3 has a 47.8% expected goal share this year, and Nashville 1 is at 55.6%. This is a matchup that favors Nashville. It's just that that's the only matchup that favors Nashville. Everything else favors Carolina. So if you want to get a bit different, I'm fine using Nashville 1 here tonight. They have had a ton of success in the past. They've looked good together this year when they've been able to be together. Remember, there's been some injuries with Forsberg and with Arvidsson, so they haven't played a ton of minutes together this year. But it is a favorable matchup for Nashville 1. So I do like Nashville 1 as a kind of an off-the-board play here a little bit. We have them coming in under 10%. Just fine for ownership. I think that, they might even come in a little bit lower than that. On the Carolina side, I think it's the same thing as Monday. I'd stack full lines. I wouldn't power play stack. Nashville just has an elite penalty kill. Just to kind of highlight that point, Nashville's expected goals against on the penalty kill in the last game would be about league average if you extrapolated it over a full season. And it was terrible. Like, it was terrible for them. And it would still be league average, like I said, extrapolated over a full season. So, no problem. Just stacking Carolina 1 or Carolina 2 full 3-man stack. That's probably where I would go. On the blue line, like Jake Bean, yeah, he's running the second power play unit, but he only played 13 minutes in the last game. So, like, I think Jake Bean is not a guy I would use a one-off. It's hard to see him having a big night without Carolina 2 also going off. So he's a guy I would correlate. Brett Pesce, 3,300. You mentioned him earlier. That's just way too cheap, I think. Anything else stick out to you for defenseman in this one?
Slavin, if he plays, I would imagine he does. He played in game 1. Ryan Ellis being under 5,000 is a bit interesting to me. He doesn't need to hit the score sheet. I think he's a guy who can get you that combo meal for under 8 or for under 5,000. The price on Yossi is reasonable too. Especially if you're using Nashville 1, he's a correlation play that makes sense there. So I'm okay with Yossi and Ellis. Dougie obviously makes sense with either the top 6 of Carolina, but yeah, Pesce or Brady Shea. Brady Shea only if Slavin's out. So, Slavin, Pesce, Shea.
Yeah, Ellis is a good call. We have him at 6% in our ownership projections. And like you said, he's not a guy that needs goals or assists to have a big night. He's definitely a double combo meal type of guy. In net, I assume you like UC Saros here again?
Yes.
Okay.
I love the juice. 7,400. That's really what you want in GPPs. Like, he has GPP winning upside at his price.
Yeah. All right. I agree with you on UC. All right. Today's show is sponsored by Jock Market. And if you haven't heard, Jock Market has turned fantasy sports into a stock exchange. Forget until the end of the game to make money. Jock Market allows you to buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all shares at the end of each night. With daily markets for NBA, MLB, NHL, and PGA, you can make real money every hour, every minute, every second of any match or game. Use the pregame IPO to pick up shares of your favorite players, then buy, sell, or hold them during the game based on your own analysis. Download the app to get started and use our exclusive Awesemo promo code Awesemo NHL20 for a $20 bonus on your first deposit. This is an exclusive offer only for the Awesemo community, so make sure to take advantage of it today. That's Awesemo NHL20 for a $20 bonus at our show sponsor, Jock Market. All right. 2 more games to get to. Let's get to the first one. Winnipeg, 2.7 implied goal total going into Edmonton. Edmonton, 3.3 implied goal total. Looks like Edmonton is running a top line of Cahoon, McDavid, Puljujarvi, and a second line of Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, and Kyler Yamamoto. Some news came down while we were doing the show. Andrew Kopp looks like he's going to play. He's going to be in on the second line for Winnipeg. But Pierre-Luc Dubois and Nick Ehlers both out for Winnipeg. Oh boy, That's not good for them. I assume most of what you like in this game is on one side, but let's break this whole thing down. What do you like here, Josh?
Yeah. Man, like, you're right. The road teams are in brutal matchups. I'm like, I don't want to go against McDavid, but with Cahoon there, like, maybe, like, it is Mike Smith in the playoffs. Maybe I'm grasping at straws here, but like, yeah, I prefer Nashville 1, but I don't think Winnipeg 1. If you're max entering in GPPs, I think you should have some Winnipeg 1 here, just because they're fully correlated on the power play. Yeah, they're going to get McDavid, but Dominic Cahoon, like, okay, if Winnipeg comes in and scores like a goal real quick, they could just blow up their lines and it's going to be McDavid, Draisaitl, Puljujarvi. But like, I'm trying to get on to a little bit of Edmonton here, Winnipeg here, and it just sucks that Ehlers is out. Like, I wish Ehlers was in. It would make this series a lot more compelling. I think, Edmonton wins this series. But you never know. We can, at like 11 o'clock tonight, be blasting "Here Comes the Oilers" gifs all over Twitter. So, like, I think, it's not the best matchup. And, most of these road teams are in brutal matchups. I think if you're going to get past Nashville 1, I think Winnipeg 1 would be my preferred option for the road team. So I think you can have a little bit of them there in GPPs. 1 to 3 is a fade for me. Other than that, on the Winnipeg side, I'm probably going to be out. That second line with Stastny, Kopp, and whoever moves up, maybe Perreault or Lowry. We don't even know.
I think they said it's going to be Christian Vesalainen. Doesn't matter.
Christian Vesalainen. So, like, that's just bad. And that makes me want to play Edmonton 2 even more. You don't have to full stack. You can leave Yamamoto off. Like, I think you can do something like a McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl. The ownership's really in check, but like, those 3 are going to be the highest owned for Edmonton. I don't know if they're going to full stack them together. I think if you're going to use that top line, you don't have to play Dominic Cahoon. You can. He's under 3,000. He's going to, give you some salary to play around with. But like we talked about, half of McDavid's goals didn't even have Draisaitl on it. So, like, you can one-off McDavid. You can put McDavid with Puljujarvi. You can put McDavid with Nugent Hopkins and Draisaitl. You can mix and match, do your thing. Winnipeg's penalty kill is pretty bad. And with all these injuries, I would imagine it makes it a bit worse. So I don't mind, having that 3-man power play. Like, if you need some salary, you can even put in the real deal James Neal at 2,500. I know you're disappointed that Chiasson's off the top power play, but I think you can mix and match some power play guys. I don't think you necessarily need to full stack anybody on the Oilers tonight. I think I'd leave the full stack into Boston 1 or Colorado 1. I think you can pick and choose what you want to do with Edmonton. Yeah,
I looked at the ownership, and I'm glad that you brought up the ownership, because we don't have any Edmonton Oilers over 20%. We have, Nathan McKinnon, 24%, Dougie Hamilton, 21%. We have, a couple Bruins over 20%, but no one from Edmonton. And it kind of makes sense, right? Like, if you play Washington 1, you can't play Edmonton. If you play Boston 1, you can't play Edmonton. If you play Carolina 1, you can't play Edmonton. If you play, Winnipeg 1, you can't play Edmonton. If you play Colorado 1, you can't play Edmonton. So, like, it actually works out pretty well that there's a lot of would appear to be lopsided matchups anyway, because that should just drive down the ownership on a lot of these players, right? I think it's a case where I would definitely want to include some wingers and not just guys that are only on the power play, because like Winnipeg 2 was a good defensive line when PLD and Ehlers were there. They're not without them. Like, I'm sorry. Andrew Kopp is average defensively. Paul Stastny, yeah, he's okay. I'll give him above average defensively. Christian Vesalainen is not. The best I can see is that being an average defensive line, and an average defensive line against Draisaitl, Yamamoto, and Nugent Hopkins, it's just not going to cut it. And like Winnipeg 1, we've talked about it all year. Blake Wheeler has just looked terrible. Their expected goals numbers are awful, 45%. That's just not going to do it. But I agree with you that the ownership is such on Winnipeg that if you wanted to use them, I would have no problem using Winnipeg 1 here tonight. I would probably slot them in just below Nashville 1. But I guess I guess it depends what you think of the goaltenders too. It's just that they have had a lot of success, and we know that if they are in the lead, those are the players that are going to be on the ice for the empty netters. They're going to play every single minute together, 5-on-5, power play, empty net, etc. Like you said, Mike Smith, like 10 months ago, Mike Smith cost the Oilers a playoff round, right?
Yeah.
Like he completely got shelled in game 1 and then got shelled early in game 2 before getting pulled, and by then it was too late. That was 10 months ago. Mike Smith is, he's played extremely well this year. It's just we should be aware he hasn't always been an elite goalie. Don't expect him to be this super elite guy every time he steps on the ice. And Edmonton and Winnipeg 1 has more than enough skill to overcome, if the Edmonton blue line has an off night or whatever. They have more than enough skill to pile up the goals on Mike Smith. So like Winnipeg 1 is a little ways down the priority list for me, but they're number 2 amongst all the road teams. So I don't mind that call at all. Digging deep, I just don't see. I'm with you on Winnipeg. I just don't see anything like Appleton Perreault. I think might be something of a decent 2-man, because like I'm not super stoked on Edmonton's 3rd and 4th lines. Like I don't think they'll be that good. Not that Winnipeg's are going to be good, but when you have trash against trash, somebody's got to come out on top at some point. So I wouldn't hate a little 2-man of like Appleton Perreault if you're getting super expensive with a Colorado 1 stack or something like that. Like I'm fine with that. On the blue line, I think Neil Pionk makes a lot of sense running Winnipeg's power play. Adam Larson typically is good for about 20 minutes. Like him at 3K for peripherals. What else do you like here?
Yeah, I like Adam Larson. I think Dylan DeMello at min price, if you need that extra salary, is okay. Derek Forbort as well at 2,900. These guys are going to block some shots. Neil Pionk, if you have the salary. On the Edmonton side, Barry, if you're doing any kind of power play, I think Nurse is the better overall play. I think I'd one off Nurse before I went off Barry. And then I agree with you on Larson. If you really wanted to punt somebody, Dmitry Kulikov, but I think I wouldn't go below Larson tonight.
All right, we got to talk about the goalies. Just give me a head nod or a head shake. Mike Smith?
No.
Connor Hellebuck?
Hellebuck, yes. I will consider Hellebuck. His price is a little bit more than I wanted, and I prefer UC Saros. But I think Hellebuck sees the volume. Hellebuck, Hellboy. I think I don't want to say this is a winnable game, but I could see the Jets winning this game like 3-2. So I think you got to consider Hellebuck.
The only goaltender we have lower owned than Hellebuck is Craig Anderson. So, if Hellebuck is the second low, I think Hellebuck's the best goalie in hockey. And if he's the second lowest owned goalie on the slate, I think it's worth at least taking a look at him.
Yeah.
All right, we got one more game to get to. Before we get to that, just want to let everyone know that we have free premium tools and data up on the site almost every day, today being no exception. We have NHL and PGA ownership projections. So you heard me just talk about Connor Hellebuck's projection for tonight. Go check it out for yourself at awesemo.com. Check out our NHL ownership projections and our PGA projections for this weekend's tournament. We have NBA ownership rankings, and we also have MLB player rankings available up on the site. So head to awesemo.com, check out what we have going on for free premium tools. And we like to celebrate subscriber success around here. So if you win, actually, it's not even if you win. If you place top 3 in a contest with over 5,000 contestants and you have an Awesemo avatar on your DFS account, tweet us at AwesemoHoff, HOF on Twitter, or just myself or Josh or whomever else. You can win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Just tweet at us with your top 3 finish in any contest with at least 5,000 participants, and you have a chance to win free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You see Tyler there throwing up some screen grabs. We've got everything from NHL Showdown to MO to NBA full slate. We've help people do it all here. So if you do win, just shout out Awesemo Hoff on Twitter.
I got one the other day from Grade A Flicks. I think I only forget is because I put out a tweet about Tom Wilson before that, and my mentions with Cap fans were just horrendous. But I'm pretty sure it's Grade A Flicks. He took down a contest on FanDuel. Congratulations! Love to see it.
Congratulations to Grade A Flicks. Yeah, just let us know, boys, and boys and girls, sorry, and we'll definitely shout you out. All right, we got one last game to get to, and boy, oh boy, is this one a doozy. We have St. Louis with a 2.1 implied goal total going into Colorado. Colorado with a 3.3 implied goal total. I believe Colorado's has come up through the day, and with the news that we just got, I'm going to assume it goes up even further. Okay, so Jake Wallman and David Perron have both been on the COVID list. Perron's been like a week. Wallman has been longer than that. This morning, we got news that there might be some problems with tonight's game regarding COVID, tonight's games regarding COVID. And for right now, it looks like there's some serious problems with St. Louis. Now, they don't know if they're false positives because we've seen that before this year where a guy's gone on the COVID list. It was a false positive with the rapid test or whatever. When the full antigen or whatever came back, he was cleared as a negative and went on the ice. So these could be false positives, but like I said, Perron and Wallman have already tested positive for COVID, and today there's been a lot of, they say, inconclusive testing or whatever it may be. They're hoping they're all false positives, but at morning skate, Vladimir Tarasenko, Jordan Binnington, and Jaden Schwartz all missing from morning skate, on top of David Perron and Jake Wallman. So that would effectively be 3 of their top 6 forwards and their starting goalie out of the lineup here tonight, assuming the game even plays. Now, I'm of the opinion that they play this game regardless, that the Blues could have 7 positives and they'll just tell St. Louis, bring up 7 guys from the AHL. Like, I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
And I'm pretty positive that the Avalanche are one of the highest vaccinated teams in hockey. I'm not 100% on that, but I know they had their COVID stuff. They had they go through their locker room, and I know people have been pretty outspoken about getting vaccinated from the Avalanche. So,
yeah. So, hopefully we're safe on the Avs side. It's just, this is the last game of the night. If it's something like what happened with Calgary a couple months ago and they cancel it 45 minutes, before the game starts, you're just boned, right? Like, there's nothing you can do. So just something to keep in mind. But the guys to really watch out for are Schwartz, Binnington, Tarasenko. Those are the guys that were missing from skate today that were not expected. So those are the 3 guys we got to watch out for tonight. That's obviously, if they're out, that's going to screw up lines. We don't know exactly what lines are going to be, but I got to think, I'm going to say this flat out, that I only had interest in the top line for St. Louis anyway, Shannon O'Reilly. If it ends up like Hoffman, Shen, O'Reilly, I would still play that line, I guess. But it just takes any interest I might have from the death from St. Louis completely out of play. How are you approaching this game?
Yeah. Where's our resident Blues fan, Nihas? Let's get some sleuthing done, Nihas. Get back to us. But yeah, I was pretty much off the Blues to begin with. They hung around in the first period, and then the dam broke. And Colorado 1 just went to work. Colorado 2 and 3 didn't really do too much from a score sheet perspective, but I think there is definitely merit to going back to them as well. Colorado 1, obviously elite line. You full stack them. You do what you do with them. I'm never going to tell you not to play them. I think they're a great play tonight. But I also think that you can go to the second line, and I think you can also go to the third line. You go back. Just because they burned you last time doesn't mean they're going to keep doing that. And I think because they did burn some people, you're going to get them at a little bit lower ownership than you did the last time. And yeah, this is a 10:30 game, and maybe there's some cancellation risk, but I think you can take that risk. Hopefully we get some news. This isn't like the regular season where they try to, postseason they hide the line combination and all this, but I would imagine if the game was at risk, they would definitely say something before, 10:30. They would probably come out a few hours before. So, Colorado onslaught, Colorado 1, Colorado 2, Colorado 3, however you want to slice it. I think I'm on board. On the Blues side, We'll wait and see on the lines. I don't mind Mike Hoffman as a one-off at 4,100, but maybe even Jordan Kyrou at 3,600. But really, I'm just naming players on the Blues just for naming players on the Blues. So that's about it.
It's a good point you brought up about the testing. Like, we should get some clarity in the next 2 to 3 hours about the testing, because the NHL does their testing in the morning and then they get the results, at like 5 Eastern or whatever it is. So hopefully we get some clarity in 2 to 3 hours. We just don't have any clarity as it stands right now. Like I said, I would, even if all those guys are out, I would have no problem playing even like a Shen O'Reilly duo. Because obviously, if St. Louis scores any goals, that's where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind something like that. But yeah, like, assuming this game goes through, how do you not play Colorado? And I wonder if we don't get lower ownership on Colorado here. Like, are people going to be scared about a late cancellation and they say, screw it, I don't need to play Colorado, I can play Edmonton in almost as good of a spot? Like, I think that might be something that you see here. That maybe instead of 25% McKinnon, maybe it's like 17% McKinnon, and instead of 19% McDavid, it's 25% McDavid or something like that. You know what I mean? I think you're going to see more Colorado, but I just want to get like real specific. Like, if I had to pick just one line, like, which is your favorite line in this game tonight, it's Colorado 2. Like, they just shredded through St. Louis in game 1. I talked about their numbers in the show on Monday. They've been excellent all year, 60% plus expected goal share. I really like Colorado too. If you want to get, if you want to stay away from what should be a really popular or somewhat popular Colorado 1, maybe less popular now with that game cancellation possibility. On the blue line, I noticed that Devin Taves' price came up a little bit. It's still fine for me at 5,100. Honestly, any of their top 3 defensemen, Makar, Taves, Gerard, are fine. I think the punt would be Patrick Nemeth. What do you see here?
Yeah, I agree with you there. And then on the blue side, I'm going to take a big hard pass.
just flat pass, just nothing. I like it.
Justin Falk, 5,300. I'd rather stick my hand in a meat grinder.
All right, fair enough. All right. All right. Remember, everybody, keep eye out for the St. Louis news updates with regards to COVID. And remember that the slate locks at 6:30 p.m. rather than 7 p.m. Josh, I'm going to ask you for your hat trick pick here for tonight. My hat trick pick is a guy that I think I've gone to twice before, and he hasn't had a goal yet. Maybe 3 goals for 3 picks tonight. Andrei Svechnikov. Who do you like?
I had the same team, so I'll mix it up. I was going to say Marty Netchis, the real party Marty. I'm gonna go back to my boy Jonas Donskoy.
The Donskoy. Josh hit a hat trick with Donskoy earlier in the year. Hopefully he can double dong that hat trick here tonight. That'll do it for us here today. Thank you very much, producer Tyler. Thanks to Josh. I'm pretty sure Jake is going to be around tomorrow for the games. Remember, keep an eye out for that St. Louis information, and good luck tonight, everybody.